November 18th, the Bronx. We were going to Giuseppe's, little Italian hole in the wall, and yet somehow they had found a way to make the best breadsticks outside of Little Italy. I'm not certain if they made the best breadsticks in the world. Certainly people in actual Italy might disagree, but it was my birthday, November 18th, and I was there with Christine. We were dating at the time, seeing each other, as she would say, and she got me a watch for a present. It was a little joke between us because I could never find the time, as she put it. I was always late for dates, late for get-togethers. There was always a talk. There was always a conference. There's always a surgery, always some lecture, always some meeting, always some excuse. And Christine did the very most Christine thing she could and did a little backhanded gift. One that was very thoughtful because my previous one had just broke, the lithium had corroded, and reminded me that she was important and that I was important to her. Suffice it to say, I did not take her gift nor her little jab to heart. I kept being late. I kept making excuses and finding other things to do. Things that, in retrospect, really weren't as important. So we broke it off. Skip ahead 2 years, we were still good friends, great co-workers, often saving lives in the operating room. She is a brilliant doctor. If there's anyone else in the operating room I'd like there to be, it'd be her. Unfortunately, it wasn't her the night that my crash happened. It was my own damn fault. I was on the phone, looking through different surgery files, and driving recklessly in the rain on a cliff. Yeah, you see, it's a recipe for disaster. My hands weren't like this before that. I went over the cliffside. Collision with another car that just grazed me, but I went out of control. I remember every second vividly and yet in a haze, thinking, oh God, this is it. In a way it was. The crumple zones for my car, very expensive car, by the way, forced the steering wheel that I was clinging to for dear life up into the dashboard, which crushed every single muscle, bone, and nerve fiber, everything in my hands. In hindsight, I could have had it much worse, but at the time, there was no worse injury for me, a surgeon. I was wearing that watch. I thought I was going to see Christine. Instead, I woke up in hospital, finding my hands mangled by the work of a subpar surgeon. which in retrospect is also my fault. I was so obsessed with being the best, being right. I never bothered to teach anyone, to write down my findings in a less than pretentious way so that other people might achieve what I could achieve. That's the problem with being the best, I guess, is that when you need help, there's no one that can really give it the way you need it. I guess it was all for the better. Not at the moment, because I basically sold everything I had, took out mortgages and loans, trying experimental, dangerous, and expensive treatments because I couldn't move past it. I was obsessed with finding a way to fix my hands, to get my life back. No lectures, no books written, no talks, until I could do what I'd always done, until I could have back what I'd lost. And in the process, I'd lost everything else, Christine included. I pushed her away. I pushed everyone away, to be fair, but her... You know, they say that it's when we're at our lowest points that we're most open to change. I guess the universe had that in mind when it introduced me to Pangborn, a man who had a back injury that should have made it impossible for him to walk, and yet he was playing basketball when I met him. And that's when he told me about Kamar-Taj, a place in Nepal where they were doing a quote-unquote experimental treatment, so my rational mind thought. Instead, it was a learning place for the mystical arts. I met many good people there. Mordo, the Ancient One, Wong, Damon. People that would change my life, for better or for worse. I decided to become a student because what the hell else was there? I had nothing else, and the Ancient One made quite an impression when she astral projected me into 30 different dimensions. I want to say that I've never experienced anything like that before, but I have tried mushrooms. It wasn't all fun and games, though. There was a dark sorcerer named Caecilius who had stolen some pages from a sacred tome in an effort to summon/communicate/sell our world to an evil entity called Dormammu. He was a being who inhabited a realm all his own, his private little world where he reigned supreme. I can't help but notice the similarities between him and me. We were both incredibly pretentious and living in our own little worlds, really. It took a lot for me to open up and eat some humble pie, so to speak. The loss of the Ancient One was part of it. The sanctums that protected our world from Dormammu were all but destroyed at the end when Caecilius struck down their keepers. It traumatized Mordo to the point where he thought that magic was the problem, that we were interfering with forces beyond our comprehension, and in a way he was right. In a way we were going too far. And at the time I would have said it was justified. I still do, but he did have a point. All of this was because people were messing around with powers they shouldn't have been. He left, and I haven't seen that version of him since. Caecilius was defeated, and I struck a bargain with Dormammu. I know, strange to think about. I essentially stuck him in a time loop because his dimension had no time, so he had to kill me over and over and over again until he recognized the futility of it. So, I made a bargain. He would take Caecilius and his followers, and in exchange, leave my dimension and never return. He took the deal, which was the smart decision. Skipping ahead about a year, we had a surprise visitor. Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, crashed through the ceiling of the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York, Bleecker Street. I don't know if it's there in your dimension, but I guess you'll find out. Bruce came with some very bad news. A being called Thanos and his armies were coming to Earth to search for the Infinity Stones. Bit of backstory here. Infinity Stones are glowing rocks. I guess you could say that each hold an infinite amount of power over a certain domain of the universe. I held the Eye of Agamotto, aka the Time Stone. It's what I used to defeat Dormammu, and it was what looked very appealing to Thanos. In his mind, the universe needed to be wiped of half of its life. I'm not sure if he means like sentient life or just like life in general. Anyways, New York was attacked by some of his thugs. A big, monstrous brute in a Squidward face with very good telekinesis. He captured me, brought me up to his spaceship, and I was rescued by Tony, Iron Man. I think you have some version of him in your world, you should. Even if he's not Iron Man, he has too big of an ego not to go unnoticed. And then I can't quite put my finger on the other one. I think it was Spider-Man. The whole... Whenever I try to think of Spider-Man, it's a little fuzzy for me. Like, I can picture his face beneath the mask, but I can't picture it at all, or know who it is, if that makes sense. Like, I was there. Anyways, Damon had made his way on the ship too. Either by blind luck with a sling ring, or incredibly accurate calculations. Either way, it was lucky he was there. Tony made a hole in the ship to kind of suck Black Maw, the telekinetic guy, out. And Spider-Man and the Cloak of Levitation simply weren't cutting it. To think I told him he should have skipped that extra arms day. That's when we intercepted, or they intercepted us, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Someone from Earth, a few other motley crew. Yeah. I don't know how they got the title or how they survived in space with the IQ they had, but hey, it worked for them, I guess. I won't go too into detail because it's kind of embarrassing, and I don't want to repeat what Peter called me. Peter's the leader of their little group. No, I'm not saying it again. Okay. Where was I? Ah, yes. Titan, Thanos' home world. We waited there to ambush him when he returned. While the rest of everyone came up with a plan, I looked ahead and saw over 14 million potential futures against Thanos in that fight. And we lost in every single one of them but one. I tried to steer events towards that one the best I could, and we lost because we had to lose. There wasn't a way to win in that fight. Thanos had to win. He got the rest of the stones on Earth or on other planets, and I gave him my time stone to save Tony's life. It was the only way. He had to survive, because in the end it was all up to him. The next 30 minutes were spent with a lot of anxiety and a lot of self-reasoning, trying to tell myself it was all going to be okay. I'd hoped. Damon believed in me. I don't know what I'd done to earn such faith after what I pulled, but he never stopped. Even when I turned to dust in his arms. Along with a lot of other good people, for about 5 years, and then the Avengers found a way to go back in time because they found Thanos and defeated him in their timeline, but it was too late. He had reduced his stones to atoms using the stones. So they had to go back and find stones in the past in a sort of time heist, I want to call it. Something like that. Only Thanos from the past, who is still alive, found out about the time heist and the time travel and stole the technology they used to make it. And then he came to the future when everyone had the 6 stones again, but not before we were able to bring everyone back. I woke up as I had hoped I would, and then I opened portals, contacted the rest of the sorcerers, Wong, and I told them, open portals for everyone, we're going to fight Thanos and his big-ass army, which had landed right in the Avengers compound on Earth. Big fight, big army, forces of good, forces of evil, blah, blah, blah. I think Captain Marvel hooked up with Spider-Man at some point. I might be misremembering that. There might be an age gap in there I'm not entirely comfortable with. How old is he? Anyways. The river jetty near... Is it a jetty or a dam? The bank was basically collapsed for the river next to the compound and threatened to flood everything. So I whipped up a whirlwind of water to keep it at bay while the fight continued. That's when I looked back to see Tony, Thanos, and Captain Marvel struggling for the gauntlet, the tool which could use the stones. Tony had made one of his own out of his own Iron Man nanotechnology. Captain Marvel and Thanos were rustling for it, but Thanos managed to force her away using one of the stones. Tony looks at me and I raise my finger. I told him there was only one way to win, and this was it. It would have taken about 12.8 seconds for Captain Marvel to get up, which was less time than we had. Tony was 30 feet from him. He jumped over, stole the stones using his own technology, and did what Thanos had been planning to do, except instead of wiping out half the universe, or the entire universe, he turned Thanos' entire army to dust to protect everyone else. I blame myself for that one, too. I keep going over in my head, there had to have been some other way. If I'd looked through twice as many futures, 3 times, if I'd looked through to see 50 million potential futures, would I have found a better path to victory? But I'll never know. Without the time stone, I could not look through the time streams to find a potential future that didn't result in that sacrifice. Using that amount of power had fried Thanos, a considerably more powerful being than Tony, a human. I can only imagine the pain he'd gone through, forcing all that energy to course through his body when he used it. He couldn't even make a sound at the end. He just sat there with his loved ones around him and died. Damon knelt beside his old friend. I'd heard him shout earlier, right before he sent his dragon familiar to help me seal the water. I saw a nasty scorch on his side. I thought, maybe it was just one of the weapons. He'd taken a hit, a bad one, but nothing that kept him away. I wish I'd known more at the time. Maybe I could have helped him. Earth's greatest hero, making the sacrifice play. I heard they're making a few new statues of him. As if his ego wasn't big enough already. He deserved it, though. Every single person who went through that did. 12 times over. Not that a lot of them would have accepted statues of themselves. Some of them know how to be humble. Skip forward about 2 years. Wait, was there something else in the middle? I could have sworn that there was... No. What? I remember Spider-Man, and I remember... God, this is so surreal. I swear I remember something happening with villains and Spider-Man, and... Was there more than one Spider-Man? Oh my god. I cast the spell that makes everyone forget. I must have done it on everyone. Why would I do that? Yeah, I'm going to have to find Spider-Man at some point and ask him, but right now this is more important. You're probably wondering why I started with something so pointless as the watch. It's part of an overarching... Overarching or overarching? Okay, thank you. Part of that overreaching theme. No, see, that doesn't sound right either. Part of this overall theme, okay. Wherein I never made the time. I could never find the time. I never had the time. I always thought there'd be more time later. With the Eye of Agamotto, I could literally make my own time, later, I had all the time in the universe. And then it was gone. And I still hadn't changed. I still assumed I'd have all the time I needed for everything. But I didn't. It started when I walked into the chapel with Damon for Christine's wedding with someone else. I had not made enough time. I hadn't found enough time. She asked me if I was happy there. Happy in general, I guess. And for the most part, I was happy. I was training in the New York Sanctuary or Kamar-Taj. I was reading, I was studying, I was attempting to move forward in my life. But classic me, I was only running away from my problems instead of resolving them. Weddings and relationships are complex and stupid. She invited me to show me that she still cared about me enough to be part of my life and wanted me to be a part of hers. And at the same time, I really wasn't anymore. Even if we both cared. I don't know if she did anymore, but I think she did enough to... Skipping past that, I remember drinking the overexpensive champagne, thinking, God, I wish something would happen. I would have taken Thor, rolling in there with barrels of meat and that big beer belly of his, and shouting and causing a ruckus, and making a problem and starting fights so that I could slip away. Hell, I would have taken Star-Lord and his guardians of the back alley. No, I'm not their biggest fan. Instead, I got a giant starfish, so, in a way, wish granted? Possibly, I guess. The starfish was chasing a young girl. I should mention, this isn't really a starfish, it's more of a cephalopodic demonic monster that's the size of a house, really. Chasing a young girl named America Chavez around. We didn't find out until later, but America had a very special ability. She could create holes and travel the multiverse through them. And I killed the starfish, don't worry. It's gone. So, we logically had to find out who was after America. I mean, a power like that it's almost like what you do. The whole dream walking thing, the whole planeswalking thing, except with her it was on accident, and she was unique across the multiverse. Planeswalkers often are. No, nothing. Just... yeah. No, I had a friend. They were so unique to the point where every time they died in one dimension, they were reincarnated into another, because there could only really be one of them, so to speak. Damon. And I'll get more to that later. But back to the point. The creature had runes and other markings on it, symbols of witchcraft. Now, witchcraft and the arcane arts, there's like nitpicky little differences. I won't go into detail here, but essentially the only witch we knew was Wanda Maximoff. Wanda had lost a lot when Thanos attacked. She lost her brother a few years earlier, and then Thanos took the love of her life from her. She tried recreating him by capturing an entire town full of people and making an imaginary world for herself. It worked for a while until she woke up, so to speak, and awakened. God, my mind is just awakened. Thank you. Awakened her true powers as the Scarlet Witch. Essentially, she was an Infinity Stone walking around, able to change reality as she saw fit. Normally, that would have been fine, except for the fact that she had created children in her, I guess, imaginary world. And in that imaginary world, she'd faced a witch who was using the Darkhold, a forbidden tome of incredible power, which fell into Wanda's hands afterwards. When I went to her to try and ascertain what had happened and see if she could help, I should have reached out to Wanda. I should have helped her. No one else did, but I could have done something. The Darkhold had corrupted her, just as much as her grief and her rage and her pain had. She was now obsessed with finding America and using her powers to enter a dimension where she still had everyone. Her children, especially. See, what the Darkhold does is it finds a fixation in your mind, and it drives you towards that, driving you into deeper and deeper depths of its power, just like it did to her. And as I figured out, running away from her through different dimensions, it had done to me. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't see more potential futures, because in one of those dimensions, the potential victory against Thanos was me using the Darkhold and its power against him, which irrefutably corrupted me. I had to be put down in that universe. It was nice. The world remembered me as a hero who gave his life to defeat Thanos. The truth was, I had become a monster worse than him. A monster so terrifying that the Illuminati, this super-powered secret organization, were more terrified of me than of Wanda, which was their last mistake. She'd found a way to enter that dimension and came after us. Damon, America, and that universe's Christine. She forced America to throw us into another dimension with another me that had found the Darkhold. A me that was obsessed with finding a Christine for himself. So obsessed, he'd ruined universes, killed alternate versions of ourself to get her, and he never could. And then, as if to laugh at me, time said, "Guess what? I'm up." Damon ended up giving his life to stop that mad version of me. I wish I'd had the courage to tell him and Christine how I felt. How I really felt. I don't know why I was so afraid when I knew they felt the same. Maybe I was afraid of how I'd feel. That I'd be unable to be happy with them. And I couldn't do that to them. It's not anything about them that's wrong, it's me. I'm the problem. Moving on. Still, we had no way to get out. Wanda had acquired America and was about to kill her and take her powers, which would, by extension, make the Darkholds hold over her and reach not universal, but like multiversal. There's not really terms for this, okay? I'm making this up as I go. Not the story, the terminology. And I had to find a way to get to them. As it turns out, the Darkhold had a means to do that. The Darkhold that corrupted version of me had used to split dimensions apart and rend them together and travel around and kill other versions of me and him. And me being the person who was obsessed with control, with having my own little world that I was the master of, was resolute in believing that I could still do something. So using the Darkhold, I did something. I was able to travel to that dimension. It was an experience I won't get into detail for because it was really bad. I fought Wanda, but was still no match. Yeah, my pride took a real blow there, but it's not like I hadn't been getting my ass kicked by her every step of the way. America was the one to thwart her, I guess. She put her in a dimension with her children, and they were terrified of what she'd become. Just like the Illuminati were terrified of me. The Darkhold exacts a heavy toll, promising us what we really want, what we're fixated on, and then when it's within our grasp, well, it worked the way America intended it to. The shock snapped Wanda back to reality, out of control of the book. And in her last moments of sanity, Wanda was able to destroy every copy of the book, the stone tablets that it had been inscribed from, and herself, removing every trace of corruption of the Darkhold across the universe. Except for one. I'd still read it. Which meant that the last traces of the Darkhold's influence and power are within me. Now, this is the point where you probably would start panicking, but I am resisting it. I'm doing my best to stay true to who I really am, because that's who they would have wanted me to be. Tony, Damon, the Ancient One, all the people who were with me along my journey, those who stayed with me and those who couldn't. I'm staying my best self, the self they knew. And it's not easy, but I'm hoping potentially, with your ability to dreamwalk inside other dimensions and people's minds even, I might be able to free myself from the darkness that's taking hold day by day. So, if I help you, potentially you could help me. Hopefully. Good. See, I'd say I knew I could count on you, but I really did know that I could count on you. I'll tell you more after you wake up. Which, now that we're able to have this meditation and you're able to center yourself, shouldn't take too long. All right. Have a seat, and let's begin.